They left me in the cold that Christmas morning, and the first thing I saw under the tree wasn't a ribbon box, but an envelope stamped with the county court seal. Not a greeting, not a note, not even a lie to soften the blow. Just that envelope waiting for me like a verdict. I stood there in my robe, barefoot on the kitchen tiles, the kettle screaming behind me. For a moment I thought my eyes had betrayed me. At 78, your sight plays tricks on you sometimes. But not like this. Not with something so deliberate. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that used to mean my husband was still asleep down the hall, breathing softly, the way he always did before dawn. But now it meant something else. It meant absence. It meant promises already broken before the day had even begun. I bent down and picked up the envelope carefully, as if it might shatter in my hands. It felt heavier than paper should, like it carried more than ink, like it carried intention. I listened for sounds outside. A car door, footsteps, laughter. My grandchildren were supposed to come early. "Christmas breakfast at your place, Grandma," they'd said. I'd believed them. The cinnamon rolls were already cooling on the counter. I'd woken before sunrise to make them just the way they liked, extra icing a little too sweet. Foolish old woman, I thought. I should have known better. My fingers didn't tremble when I opened the envelope. That part still surprises me. I thought they would. I thought I'd shake the way I did the day the doctor told me my husband wouldn't be coming home from the hospital. But my hands were steady, calm, almost prepared. Notice of eviction. I read it once, then again. The words blurred, lost meaning, turned into shapes on a page. Then my eyes found the name. My son. Printed neatly, officially, like betrayal looks cleaner when typed. The kettle had gone silent. The house noticed before I did. The floor felt colder beneath my feet. I'd left the heating low overnight, but December has a way of creeping into your bones and staying there. I walked to the window. The yard was covered in frost, every branch shining like it had been dusted with sugar. The old oak tree stood frozen in place, the one my husband planted the year our son was born. I used to decorate it with him when he was little. He'd hold my hand tightly and say, "This tree is ours." I suppose it still is. Only now he wants it without me. I folded the letter not to keep it neat, but because I couldn't bear to look at that seal anymore. It felt like something had been taken from my chest, something no one had the right to touch. No calls, no messages, not even an apology pretending to be concerned. I checked my phone anyway. Twice. 3 times. Nothing. I stood there in the stillness of Christmas morning, holding that envelope, and realized something with a clarity that felt almost cruel. This wasn't sudden. This had been planned, and whatever they thought would happen next, they were wrong. If this was the ending they prepared for me, why did it feel like the beginning instead? I didn't sit down right away. The letter stayed folded in my hand as I moved through the house, slow and careful, like I was walking through someone else's life. Every step felt louder than it should have, the floorboards answering me in small creaks, as if the house itself was awake and listening. This place has always listened. I passed the living room first. The sofa where my husband used to fall asleep every evening, glasses slipping down his nose, newspaper folded neatly beside him as if he planned to finish it later. He never did. The clock on the wall still ticked faithfully, though the frame had faded in one corner from years of afternoon sun. Time kept going even when people didn't. I rested my fingers on the back of his chair. The fabric was worn smooth, shaped by decades of the same body, the same weight. I wondered how long it would take for that imprint to disappear if I wasn't here anymore. Weeks? Months? Or would it linger like I had, quietly refusing to leave? The letter pressed against my palm, reminding me why I was standing there instead of sitting down. I hadn't cried yet. That worried me more than tears would have. I walked down the hallway, past the photographs lining the wall. Birthday candles. School plays. Smiling faces frozen in moments when love was easy and expectations were small. I stopped at one picture in particular. My son at 10 years old, holding a crooked cardboard rocket he'd made at school. He'd insisted it could fly. I told him it already had. I wondered when that boy learned how to take without asking. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and sugar. The rolls sat untouched, perfect and pointless. I stared at them longer than necessary, thinking how strange it was that something made with love could go cold so quickly. I placed the letter on the table and smoothed it out, the way I used to smooth my son's hair when he was little and couldn't sleep. Back then he leaned into my hand. Trusted it. Now my name sat beneath words I didn't recognize, attached to a decision I never agreed to. I pulled out my old notebook from the drawer, the one where I write things down because memory has a habit of wandering at my age. Dates, numbers, names, proof that I still exist in ink even when people forget. 21 days. That number stared back at me like a countdown I hadn't signed up for. I told myself there had to be a mistake, that someone had misunderstood something, that this would be cleared up with a single phone call, a laugh, an apology delivered too late but still delivered. But deep down, beneath all that hope, something quieter stirred. A memory. 2 summers ago. My son standing right where I was standing now, paper spread across this same table. He'd talked fast that day. Too fast. Said it was insurance. Refinancing. Just routine stuff, Mom. He'd pointed where I needed to sign, his hand covering the rest. I remember hesitating, and then signing anyway, because he was my son. The room felt colder all at once. I pulled my cardigan tighter, though it did little to help. Outside, the wind shook the oak tree, sending a dusting of frost down like silver rain. The world looked peaceful, almost kind. I stood there, staring at that letter, and understood something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. Trust once given can be used as a weapon, and I had handed it over willingly. If one signature could undo a lifetime, what else had I given away without realizing it? I sat down slowly, as if the chair might disappear if I trusted it too quickly. The letter lay open on the table now, no longer folded, no longer spared from my eyes. I read every line again, not skimming, not hoping it would change. I read it the way you read something when you're finally ready to stop pretending. There it was, a transfer of ownership. My name printed beneath it. My signature reproduced in ink that looked almost right. Almost. I stared at it until my eyes burned. There are things you know instinctively. The way you know your own reflection, or the sound of your name spoken by someone who loves you. That signature wasn't mine. It leaned the wrong way. Too sharp. Too confident. Mine had softened over the years, rounded by age, by arthritis, by the quiet patience of someone who no longer rushes. This one rushed. My hands curled into fists without permission. I pressed them flat against the table until the tremor passed. Anger arrived late, but when it did, it came carefully, deliberately, like someone stepping into a room they intended to stay in. I stood again and opened the hall closet. Henry used to keep important things there. Papers. Receipts. The quiet proof of a life built honestly. He never trusted banks alone. Always keep your own copy, he used to say. People forget what belongs to who. I reached past old coats and winter blankets I barely used anymore. My fingers brushed cardboard, then plastic. A folder. Thick. Familiar. The deed. The original. I carried it back to the kitchen table as if it were fragile, laying it beside the court notice. Truth and lie side by side. My name appeared there too clean, clear, unchallenged. No transfer. No amendments. No signature given away in trust or confusion. My breath caught, not with relief but with something steadier. Resolve. I thought of calling my son, demanding an explanation, asking him how he could do this. But I already knew how the conversation would go. His voice calm, concerned, just enough doubt planted in my mind to make me question myself. Mom, you must be confused. No, not this time. I reached for the phone anyway, but not to call him. The bank answered after 3 rings. They knew my name. They always had. The woman on the line spoke gently, professionally. I asked her to remove every authorization on my accounts, every shared access, every quiet permission I'd handed over because it was easier than arguing. There was a pause. Are you certain? She asked. I looked at the forged signature again. Yes, I said. I'm certain. When I hung up, the house felt different. Still quiet, but no longer hollow. More like the pause before something shifts. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A message from my son. Mom, did you change something with the bank? Call me. I didn't answer. For the first time in years, I let him wait. I tidied the kitchen slowly, deliberately. Small movements. Controlled breathing. A woman reminding herself she still knows how to stand. Because whatever he thought he had taken from me, he hadn't taken my voice. If stopping his access was enough to make him panic, what would happen when he realized I wasn't backing down at all? The phone didn't ring right away. That was almost worse. It sat there on the counter, silent and watchful, like it knew something I didn't. I kept myself busy, wiping the table, stacking the plates, folding the dish towel just to unfold it again. Movements meant to steady my hands, to give my thoughts somewhere safe to land. Then it buzzed. Once. A message. Mom, call me. Something's wrong with the mortgage payment. I read it without blinking. The words slid over me like cold water. Mortgage. Payment. Something's wrong. Of course there was. I didn't reply. Another buzz followed quickly, sharper this time, impatient. Please call me ASAP. I placed the phone face down. For years, I had answered every call the moment it came through. I had trained myself to be available, dependable, easy. I thought that was what love looked like. Turns out it's also what being used looks like when you're too close to see it. The phone rang. I let it ring until it stopped. It rang again. By the fifth time, the sound no longer startled me. It annoyed me. A strange shift, realizing how much power a small noise once held over my heart. I walked to the hallway mirror and stopped. The woman looking back at me was older than the one in my memory. Her face lined with years that hadn't been gentle. But her eyes were clearer than I remembered. Not soft with excuses. Not blurred by hope that people would change if I waited long enough. This is my house, I said to her reflection. My life. The phone rang again. I answered this time, but I didn't rush my voice to meet his. Hello. Mom, he said, breath tight, frustration leaking through. What did you do? I adjusted my accounts, I replied calmly. You can't just. He stopped himself, then softened his tone. There are payments, commitments. You're creating a mess. So am I said. That's interesting. Silence. Then too quickly. There must be a misunderstanding. Let me come over and explain. No, I said. One word. Firm. Another pause. Longer. Mom, he tried again, slower now. You're upset. You shouldn't be making decisions like this alone. There it was. The familiar dismissal, wrapped in concern. The suggestion that age had made me fragile. Confused. Unreliable. I'm not confused, I said quietly. I'm paying attention. His voice sharpened. You're being difficult. I almost laughed. I received a court notice with your name on it, I said. That changes things. He exhaled hard. It's paperwork. Complicated stuff you don't need to worry about. My signature was on it. Another silence. Thicker now. You always trusted me, he said at last. Yes, I replied. That was my mistake. The line went dead before he could respond. I set the phone down gently. Outside, the frost was beginning to melt. And inside, something else was thawing too. Rehook. If he thought fear would pull me back into line, what would he do when he realized fear no longer worked? The house felt heavier after the call. Not threatening, just aware. As if the walls had heard everything and were waiting to see what I would do next. I stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, my hand resting on the counter, letting my breath settle. Courage doesn't arrive with noise. It comes quietly, like something pulling itself upright after being bent too long. I knew what came next. I had known it all along. I opened the drawer where I kept old numbers, real ones written in ink, not saved in a phone that could be wiped or changed without asking me. The little address book was soft from age, its corners rounded by years of turning pages. Names crossed out, numbers rewritten, proof that life keeps moving even when you don't want it to. Henry's handwriting was there. Thomas Buckley, attorney at law. My fingers lingered on the name. Henry had trusted him. Not because he was aggressive or clever, but because he listened. Because he explained things without rushing. Because he believed ordinary people deserved protection too. I dialed slowly. Each ring felt like a step forward I couldn't undo. Buckley Law Office, a woman answered, her voice calm, steady. My name is Martha Ellingham, I said. I need to speak with Mr. Buckley. There was a pause. Then warmth entered her tone. One moment, Mrs. Ellingham. I stared out the window while I waited. The oak tree swayed slightly in the breeze, branches bare but unbroken. It had survived storms worse than this. Martha, a familiar voice finally said. Older now. Deeper. It's been a long time. Yes, I replied. It has. I told him everything. Slowly. Carefully. I didn't rush. I didn't soften the truth. When I mentioned the eviction notice, he went quiet. Not shocked, not dismissive. Professional. Focused. Did you knowingly sign a transfer of ownership? He asked. No. Did your son have power of attorney? No. Do you have the original deed? Yes, I said. Right in front of me. Good, he replied. That matters more than you know. Something loosened in my chest at that. Not relief, direction. Bring everything to my office tomorrow, he continued. And do not discuss this further with your son or his wife. He's been calling all day, I said. I imagine he has, Thomas replied gently. That usually means the leverage has shifted. When the call ended, the house felt steadier. Not safe yet, but anchored. My phone buzzed again almost immediately. Mom, you're making this worse. Call me. Then another. Sandra's worried about you. I turned the phone face down. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. I wasn't angry. I was done being small. I gathered the papers into a neat stack. The deed, the notice, my notes. I placed them in my bag like something valuable because that's what they were. Outside, the sky darkened early, winter settling in without apology. Tomorrow I would walk into a lawyer's office. Not as a confused old woman, but as someone finally ready to defend her life. Rehook. If the law was now listening, what would my son do when he realized I wasn't alone anymore? Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle the way it always did after midnight. A soft pop in the walls. The faint whistle of wine through the window frame Henry never quite fixed right. Sounds that used to comfort me now felt like witnesses, quiet, patient, waiting to see if I would falter. I didn't. Morning arrived pale and cold. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy coat Henry always liked because it made me look serious. I pinned my hair back, not out of vanity but habit. When you go to do something that matters, you show up fully. That's what my mother taught me. Thomas Buckley's office smelled like old books and coffee. Familiar. Safe. He rose slowly when I entered, his eyes kind but sharp, the way they'd always been. You look well, he said. I feel awake, I replied. That seemed to please him. We spread the papers across his desk. He examined everything in silence. The notice, the forged signature, the original deed. His jaw tightened just slightly, enough to tell me what I needed to know. This isn't just unethical, he said at last. It's illegal. The word landed heavier than I expected. Illegal. Not misunderstanding. Not family conflict. Not something to be smoothed over with apologies. A crime. Your son assumed you wouldn't fight, Thomas continued. That you'd be embarrassed. Afraid. Or too tired. I thought of all the years I'd swallowed discomfort to keep peace. How many times I'd chosen quiet over truth. I nodded slowly. He underestimated you, Thomas added. Yes, I said. He did. By the time I left his office, the steps ahead were clear. Court filings. Injunctions. A formal challenge. It would take time. Strength. Patience. I had all three. My phone rang as I stepped outside. My son. I answered. What are you doing? He demanded, skipping pleasantries altogether. I just got a call from a lawyer. I told the truth, I said simply. You didn't have to go this far, he snapped. We could have handled this privately. You already did, I replied. Without me. Silence crackled through the line. You don't understand how hard things have been, he said finally. I did this for the family. For yourself, I corrected. And you did it thinking I'd stay quiet. His voice softened, urgent now. Mom, if this goes to court, you'll have to explain why you forged my signature, I finished. He inhaled sharply. That was the moment. The moment power shifted completely. I raised you to tell the truth, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. I won't protect you from it now. I ended the call before he could respond. As I stood there on the sidewalk, winter sun cutting through the clouds, I finally understood the meaning of that envelope under the tree. It wasn't an ending. It was a test. And for the first time in a long while, I knew I was going to pass it. Rehook final lead-in. But what my son didn't know, what no one knew yet, was why I was so ready to fight, and what I had already prepared long before that envelope ever appeared. The truth is, the envelope under the tree didn't shock me the way it should have. It hurt. Yes, it cut deep. Absolutely. But it didn't break me because long before that Christmas morning, I had already learned what it feels like to lose everything that matters. Henry and I had faced it together once. Years earlier, when the doctor sat across from us with folded hands and careful eyes, explaining timelines instead of cures. When the house fell quiet in a different way. When we learned that love doesn't protect you from loss. It only gives you something worth fighting for afterward. That was when we planned. Not out of fear. Out of respect. Henry insisted on it. Papers reviewed. Copies stored. Safeguards put in place that no one else knew about. People change, he told me gently one night, as we sat at this very table. Even the ones we raise. I didn't want to believe him, but I listened. That original deed in my closet? That wasn't luck. The lawyer I called? That wasn't desperation. It was preparation. When Thomas filed the final documents, everything unraveled quickly after that. The forged signature didn't survive scrutiny. The eviction notice was withdrawn. Ownership reaffirmed. Permanently. My son didn't come to court. His lawyer did. I didn't look for him in the hallway. I didn't need to. The boy I raised wasn't there anymore. And mourning him didn't require my presence in that building. Weeks later, the house was quiet again. But this time it felt earned. I donated the cinnamon rolls recipe to the church bake sale. I planted bulbs beneath the oak tree for spring. I rearranged the furniture not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The phone stayed mostly silent. And I let it. One afternoon I took the envelope, the very one that started it all, and placed it in the fireplace. I watched it curl and darken and disappear, not with anger but with understanding. Some things are meant to be faced. Others are meant to be released. The moral isn't that family can betray you, because we already know that. The moral is this: age does not make you powerless. Silence does. And the moment you choose to speak, to protect yourself, your truth, your life, you become stronger than anyone who ever underestimated you. That envelope under the tree? It wasn't a warning. It was proof that I was still here. Still capable. Still standing. And this house? It remembered me all along. If this story moved you, like to honor those who find their voice later in life. Share this with someone who needs the reminder. Subscribe for more real human stories that matter. Because it's never too late to choose yourself.